Hey, I'm Rob Adler, and welcome to Understanding Upstate. It's a podcast dedicated to exploring what makes upstate New York such a unique place. And each week, my co-host Jim Search and I dive into a new upstate topic to better understand what's up upstate. And today, we're talking Rod Serling. I almost said Rod Stewart. Jim.
Could you imagine if, like, this entire episode, we just talked about Rod Stewart, but, like, talked about the life of Rod Serling, but just kept saying Stewart the entire time, which would be like an episode of the Twilight Zone.
That's true.
Where true. We just completely talk like that. That'd be great.
I was just going to say, they both have good hair.
That's true.
Right?
Rod did have some pretty coiffed hair. Both Rods had pretty coiffed hair.
It's true. It's true.
If I may say so myself. Yeah, that's stellar intro. I like this. I'm Jim Search, as Rob said, and very excited to bring you this episode. We have again a upstate New York legend and icon that we're here to talk about, and should we just jump right in, get into it?
Well, I was going to say, what's your connection to Rod Serling? Let's start with that, and then we can get into the man himself.
Yes. Well, as a Binghamtonian, I mean, Rod hails from Binghamton, New York, and growing up in Binghamton, you can't escape the legacy and the name of Rod, and he was such like an interesting human being. And as I was growing up, what I always found fascinating of knowing that he's from where I'm from is just how Twilight Zone-y Binghamton is, and then watching the show and being like, oh, I totally get it. And it's like, it genuinely is one of those things where it's like, being born and raised in Binghamton, when you say to someone like, well, Rod Serling created the Twilight Zone and he is from Binghamton, and if you visit, you'll understand, that's kind of like the connection that a lot of us have in Binghamton. And he was an inspiring dude. I mean, he really created a lot of amazing television, amazing art. And, I think that is something that I at least, speaking on behalf of me, am proud of, to say that he is from Binghamton and that I'm from Binghamton. So that is what he means to me,
Yeah, I had watched, at some point in the last 10 years, I watched every single Twilight Zone episode, and watched it as like a kid too.
Sure.
A bunch. And yeah, when I think you were the person that told me is from Binghamton, I was like, oh, that all makes so much sense. Like, it's there, like you said, there's a lot of Binghamton and just upstate New York in general in and throughout the Twilight Zone. And it really connected some pieces for me. Being able to kind of connect those dots.
It's definitely our total claim to fame. And if you got, we've been through Binghamton, but to those who are listening who may have never, in fact, been through Binghamton, there is definitely the energy and there is the tangible dedication. Like the Bundy Museum has a really great exhibit about Rod. There's a mural of him in the back of it, and it's just like you watch the episode of the Twilight Zone, you drive through Binghamton, you go, oh, okay, got it. That being said, let's talk about it, shall we? Let's get into the life and times of R. Serling. So Rod was born December 25th, just like Jesus Christ, just like our Lord and Savior, the Lord and Savior of the 607.
Sure.
December 25th, 1924, in Syracuse, New York.
Oh,
what
the? I'm walking off the pod.
Well, listen, I feel like that's like the biggest like Twilight Zone plot twist ever. Is like, how many of us are like, no, he is born in Binghamton. He is Binghamton's son. And it's like, well, technically, this man was born in Syracuse.
Look, I may have a quote for you about Binghamton from Rod himself.
Oh,
Can I hit you with it?
Yeah, of course. I would love it. Let's go.
All right. This is Rod on Binghamton. In the strangely brittle, terribly sensitive makeup of a human being, there is a need for a place to hang a hat or a kind of geographical womb to crawl back into. Or maybe just a place that's familiar because that's where you grew up. Everybody has to have a hometown. Binghamton's mine.
Whoa, that's fucking dope.
Born in Syracuse, but Binghamton's home.
Binghamton is where he hangs his hat, and that's motherfucking right. Hangs his hat in the Hamptons, baby.
There you go.
So, yes, born in Syracuse, but spent most of his youth in Binghamton. And his family moved there in 1926. His family consisting of an older brother who was a novelist and aviation writer, Robert Serling, and born to parents Esther and Samuel. He moved to Binghamton in 1926, which moved to Bennett Ave. And fun story, the Bundy Museum has his house on the tour. And in fact, one of my good friends lives in that house. And I can tell you right now, he is less than pleased. The Bundy Museum is put his house on that tour. So fun story there.
I got someone else with beef with the Bundy Museum, which we'll get to later. So this is
all right.
This is fascinating.
Let's go. So as Rod grew up, he was encouraged early to go after his talent as a performer. In fact, his father built a small stage where Rod would put on plays for the neighborhood. And legend has it that Rod was such a talkative kid that they took a family trip from Syracuse to Binghamton once, and Rod spoke uninterrupted.
How long of a drive is that?
That is about a 45-minute to an hour drive.
All right.
So Rod essentially was doing a modern day podcast, a single person podcast for his family. And we knew then that he had a gift. He had a gift of word. Now, interesting fact, Rod was considered to be a class clown growing up and dismissed as a lost cause in school, which sucks because think of how brilliant he is and think of how there was a teacher out there that said, fuck this kid, and he ain't shit. However, his 7th grade teacher, Helen Foley, encouraged him to take up public speaking. And fun fact about that is in Binghamton, New York, at Binghamton High School, there is the Helen Foley Theater, which was a tribute to her and her inspiration for Rod. So that is also another feather in our cap here in the Old Hamptons. And Rod then went on to write for the school newspaper, having a reputation for being a social activist, which, as we know with his work, follows him through into the Twilight Zone. Now, he enlists in the military, at which point he takes up boxing and is very good at it.
Wow. All right.
What can't he not do?
You know, like, still a good-looking dude, right? Like,
yeah,
must have been a good boxer. That's probably didn't get punched that much.
That's what I'm saying, man. And that's in the Binghamton DNA is just violence. We're predisposed to being excelling in violence, be it physical or metaphorical. So. Interestingly enough, Serling did see combat, which deeply impacted his writing, and he used writing as a tool to get all of the, the angst off of his chest, if you will.
I think he was a paratrooper too. Like he was
right.
He's doing some serious stuff. I think at one point he was in the Pacific.
Yeah.
Yeah, intense.
And again, it's like when you hear that and then think about like all the crazy shit that he's writing, it's like you probably wouldn't have had the depth of the Twilight Zone had he not been like psychologically scarred by violence, right? Oh
yeah, like not half, but a good chunk of the episodes deal with like military experience, and they're wild for a TV show of that era.
I think that's a good jumping off point for an episode that he had that was called, this is when the Twilight Zone was in full tilt, was called No Christmas This Year. And the premise of the show was it was told in a place that no longer celebrated Christmas, although nobody knew that Christmas had been canceled. So they're just wondering what's going on. Meanwhile, at the North Pole, the viewer sees Santa Claus dealing with striking elves, because rather than creating toys and candy, the North Pole started manufacturing bombs and gases. So it's like,
jeez.
Correct.
Jim, I'll take the lump of coal
instead of a can of mustard gas.
Yeah.
That tracks. So anyway, going back in time, following the war, Rod really got involved with radio and found a tough go of it, being rejected after rejection after rejection, rather, finding that many of the scripts that he was writing were better translated for television. So after that, he finds a career in professional writing in the 50s, earning $75 a week for WLW in Cincinnati, Ohio. Which right now, $75 a week sounds fucking great.
I was going to say, not bad. Not bad.
Yeah. I wish we, in hindsight, we should have done like the calculation of what $75 a week is today. But you guys, you're listening. You can figure that out. That's fine. Right.
Yeah.
So after that, so he worked there for a little bit, and then he moved to Connecticut with his family, and then his agent then convinced him to move to New York City because, quote, that's where the action is. Now, in 1955, the Nationwide Craft Television Theater televised a program based on Serling's 70-second script.
Jesus.
Which, like, that's like a testament to how hard it is to fucking do anything entertainment wise or anything creative. Like Rod Serling's 70-second fucking script then turned into a television show.
Well,
right?
Here's hoping on our second episode, we hit it big and not on our, well, I mean, if it happens on the 72nd, I'll be all right.
Just know that, ideally second, but prepared for the 72nd.
Sure.
Or even longer, because we love upstate New York and we love talking all about it. So the episode that aired, in fact, Rod didn't even really give a shit about it. In so much of like he missed like the live broadcast of it.
There's no TiVo, there's no VHS. Like that's it. That blows my mind. It's like, fuck it. I got better things to do than watch my show on TV.
Right, for that time, right? Like he's just like, fuck it, like who gives a shit? And went about his life. Now, this episode was called Patterns, and then that is what ultimately set everything in motion, right? So after this, after the episode of Patterns airs, Serling is inundated with job offers, congratulations, requests for novels, plays, television and radio scripts. So he blows the fuck up from this, right? So once all this demand comes in for all this shit, he just starts selling the lower quality work that he had, just like this B and C scripts, just like, all right, here, just take it, right? And then after they were published, he finds himself like under some kind of blowback because these haven't met up to what Patterns was.
Right.
So then he writes an episode, Requiem for a Heavyweight, which is like an ode to his boxing days. And that is what kind of sets everybody back right. And now everybody loves him.
It sounds like a lot of his early successes were writing for like other anthology shows, right?
Sure.
Much like what, Twilight Zone's a new story each week kind of thing. And that's an interesting kind of through line.
Yeah, that he like had this kind of lane that was his, and then we see Twilight Zone takes that, but then turns it on its head.
Yeah.
Right. And this is the other thing that's crazy about Rod, right? Is like he was doing all of this work, like all the crazy shit that he was doing in a time when like we think cancel culture is a thing now. It's very fucking different in the time that Rod is making television.
Yeah.
Because like the early years of television saw sponsors working as editors on a show, which is crazy to think that like if you're like, I don't know, like Tide, right? Like Tide is your sponsor. They are now the editor in the television show that you wrote. Like they don't know shit about writing, right? So this is to give you an example of how deep the shit got. There was a line on Requiem for a Heavyweight where a character says, "Got a match?" And that was taken out because one of the sponsors for the show was a lighter company.
That's that sounds stupid.
And also just like, who in their right mind is going to be like, man, this boxer just asked for a match. Fuck lighters. I don't need them.
I mean, it just speaks to the strength of Big Lighter back in the 50s.
The big lighter lobby.
We thought it was cigarettes all along. It was really the lighter companies. It was Bic.
Right.
Bic's been running it all along.
And like, here's another one, right? This is another wild one too. Like, he had a reference to the Chrysler building in an episode, and it was removed from the script by Ford because Ford was the sponsor for that episode.
Is there a Ford building though? Like,
right. What have you been doing, Ford?
Yeah, get the fuck out of here, Ford.
So then Rod is just like, I'm going to go after my own dream, if you will. So that is kind of what springs into the Twilight Zone, believe it or not. This is like when he's just like writing shows. So Serling submits the time element to CBS as the pilot for like a weekly show, The Twilight Zone. Instead, CBS used the science fiction script for a new show produced by Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball in 1958. Now, Serling eventually breaks in and the Twilight Zone gets aired. CBS finally agrees to do it. And as we know, Serling draws from his own experience for many of the episodes. A lot of these are about boxing, military life, and pilots. You know, I'm even thinking of like the famous episode where the John Lithgow is on the plane and there's a gremlin on the plane.
Well, it's John Lithgow in the
movie.
But
right.
It's oh my god, I'm blanking on his name. He's Captain Kirk.
Oh my god, how is this?
I'm terrible with names of things I'm supposed to be like an expert in. Man.
That's okay.
Hold on.
All right.
Captain Kirk, famously played by William Shatner. Jeez.
Oh my God, man! You better turn in your card, my friend.
No, I should. So the thing I was going to say, you mentioned
right.
Lucille Ball, famous upstate New Yorker as well.
Mm-hmm.
Born in Jamestown.
Let's go.
She is also the reason why we have Star Trek. She backed a different Rod, Gene Roddenberry, and on his creation of Star Trek, I think around actually the same time. So interesting how much she's helped shape like science fiction.
Which you wouldn't necessarily think of, right?
Yeah.
Like, you would think, I wouldn't have equated those two. And this show is about learning. And that's what we're here to do. Now, I did want to touch on the Twilight Zone incorporated his social views on race relations, although thinly veiled with science fiction and fantasy elements from the show. Mm-hmm. Right. So like he made like these allegorical references because at that time, there's no way that he could have been like, man, this country is steeped in racism, because they'd have been like, sir, we are sponsored by the Nazis. So they got a problem with that because none of that exists. Although he was able to really, again, push the envelope and dance on the line with the episode I Am the Night, Color Me Black, in which the hatred causes a dark cloud to form in a small town in the American Midwest and then spreads throughout the world. So racism being the cloud that is over everyone. Wild.
Right.
So the Twilight Zone aired for 5 seasons. The first 3 presented as half-hour episodes. Then the 4th had hour-long episodes, and the 5th went back to the half-hour format. Won so many different awards and, critically acclaimed television show. And interestingly enough, as much as it had its loyal fan base, the Twilight Zone only had moderate ratings and was twice canceled and then revived.
Dang.
Wild. So eventually, Serling sold the rights of the Twilight Zone to CBS, and, feeling that like he had a team of writers that he believed that would handle the business. He took the money from that sale and created Cuyahoga Productions, which was his own production company. And that, in a nutshell, is the story of Rod. And not only did Rod mention and talk about his military experience in boxing, etc., but he would reference Binghamton, New York in a lot of those episodes. So, for example, Helen Foley was a recurring character on the show. And in addition to that, he would have episodes about the carousels, which Binghamton being the carousel capital of the world.
Actually, there's a specific recreation of a Binghamton carousel in one of the episodes. It was, let's see. Oh, yeah, the episode's Walking Distance.
Mm-hmm.
And the fictionalized town is called Homewood, but it is supposedly Binghamton. And it's a Don Draper type who blows out of New York City,
right?
Tired of the rat race, and he ends up walking into his hometown after his car breaks down. And there's a couple scenes at a carousel, and there's also like a bandstand that have been recreated from Recreation Park, if you're familiar. Which I gotta say, not a very specific name for a park, Jim. But it's all right. It's all right.
See, you know what? We need this perspective, right? I think it's important to have that.
But yeah, there's even a plaque there commemorating it.
Oh, I was going to say, in that plaque, I'm sure it's the same one we're talking about. I have a picture of it somewhere on my phone. But it's in this kind of Coliseum area in Rec Park. So there's all these, it's like a circular column area. And then in the middle of it is that plaque.
I believe that's the bandstand.
Yes.
You're describing. Yeah.
There you go. We're all tying this together here, folks. And then, when you stand in the middle of that, you can scream and you can hear your voice and it echoes and all that good stuff. So,
all right, next time I'm there, I'm going to do some screaming. Cool.
Well, you know what? Listen, where podcast is over, we're getting in the car. Fuck it.
It's only a few hours.
Yeah, we can get over there.
Yeah.
So, I did want to touch on a couple other points here, as we said earlier, but just go in a little bit deeper of Serling's anti-war activism. He was a very outspoken activist, especially during the Vietnam War. And again, the No Christmas This Year was a script written in that light. And then there was an episode of another social justice issue as well, racial equality. Rod wrote an episode entitled "A Town Has Turned to Dust," which set in a southwestern town in a deep drought. It sees poverty and despair turn to racial tensions when an ineffectual sheriff is unable to stand against the town. A young Mexican boy is lynched, and the whole town is to blame. So he really was digging in deep to all of the horrible things that were happening in this country, because I think Rod really knew one of the most effective weapons is using a mirror to show what something looks like. And it makes perfect sense that he was often criticized for the time, right? Because we know how that goes.
There's 150 episodes, over 150, I think, of the Twilight Zone. And he's able to do that time and time and time again. Like, it's not, just a couple that have a poignant message. Like,
right.
There's so many of them. He was so effective and skilled at pulling it off really well.
And I think in that skill is the different nuances, right? And he's telling a different story each time, but the theme coming back to how destructive and how horrible it is, right? And again, I think that speaks to his imagination and his ability to write. So now, as we move down the timeline of Rod, I think it's time to talk about the third act of Rod's life. As you may guess, as we lead into this, Serling was said to have smoked 3 to 4 packs of cigarettes a day.
Woo! Goodness.
For those of you doing the math at home, cigarette packs have 20 each. So what is that? 20 times 4, 80 cigarettes a day.
Did he die of starvation? Because I don't know how he worked in time to eat.
He didn't, but that is, you would think, right, that would be the way that he was done in. May 3rd, in 1975, he had a heart attack and was hospitalized, released 2 weeks later, and then had a second heart attack, which forced the doctors to do an open heart surgery, which was very risky for the time. And then June 26th, he had third heart attack.
Man.
So my man has had 3 heart attacks in less than a year. And unfortunately, that was the one that did him in. He died in Rochester, New York. How old do you think he was when he died?
Goodness. Not that old. I'm gonna go just right down the middle with 50.
You would be correct.
Whoa!
He was 50 years old
On the
when
button.
he died. 50 when he died. So which is young, but then again, if you are smoking 80 cigarettes a day,
I think he did all right. He did okay.
He was beating the odds in Vegas. Then, and this is again just to kind of show you the disparity of age, on January 9th, 2020, his wife, Carolyn Louise Kramer Serling, died at 90 years old.
She was only doing 2 packs a day.
Yeah, I think that's really that's the key. Had Rod stayed at 2, he probably could have at least cracked 75. So she, in fact, is buried next to Rod. Now, speaking of his legacy, because now that we are at the point where he has passed away, I think it's important for us to talk about the indelible impact that he has had. He has been woven into modern pop culture through his popularity of the Twilight Zone. It's referenced across so many different works. He paved the way for science fiction on television. You know, you don't have Quantum Leap, you don't have Black Mirror if you don't have the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Right. So since 1995, Binghamton High School, partnered with WSKG TV, has the Rod Serling Video Festival for students to submit K through 12. And it encourages young people to get involved in filmmaking. And Rob, what if I told you that in 10th grade, your friend, James Search, won the Rod Serling Video Festival?
And we'll be screening this video when? I need to see this post haste.
Oh my God. If we could get a hold of it, man. It was called Number 9.
Like it already?
Yeah, great. And in fact, shout out to my man, Jamie Sullivan, He and I, we were in photography class together, and we worked on our video with two other people I can't remember. And sure enough, we won that shit. And what we got, the prize, is we got a free video rental from Video King, baby.
Whoa, Video King. Pretty sweet.
Rest in peace to Video King.
What movie did you rent? That's what I gotta know.
I wish I could remember, man. This was over 25 years ago. Sure. But
we could have figured when you mentioned Video King.
Oh, you didn't think that this was last week?
The reign has long since ended.
Yeah, that's fair to say. And then Blockbuster soon to fall after that. But again, as we talked about at the top of the show, there's a very, very awesome exhibit at the Bundy Museum that has a lot of the artifacts from Rod Serling's life, letters that he had written to Helen Foley. If you deep cut Talking Tina, the doll.
Whoa.
The actual doll.
They got Talking Tina?
Talking Tina is in the house. Don't try and throw her down the stairs because you know what happens next.
That's true.
And also, again, it would be remiss of me not to mention in terms of the legacy, every year, New Year's Eve into New Year's Day, the Twilight Zone marathon airs on the Sci-Fi Network. So you can go watch a lion's share of those episodes. I don't recommend watching all of them because you might go crazy. If you watch them in one sitting, you might go crazy. It is a yearly tradition in the James Search household that I wear my Rod Serling t-shirt.
Ooh.
And my green Hawaiian shirt and buckle in for all things Twilight.
And you smoke 4 packs of cigarettes that day too, right?
Definitely run through 4 whole packs of cigarettes because just as Rod would want it, baby.
I think we do a competition where you see how many episodes you can get in before you pass out from smoking cigarettes, right?
Yes.
Whoever gets the furthest in wins.
Right. Wins a trip to the hospital.
There you go. There you go.
So that's it. That's what I got.
I got some more, though. I got some more.
Come on with it, man. Let's go.
I threw some of this in earlier, but I did a little research into Rod Serling and Binghamton and kind of how they relate through the Twilight Zone. And I got a little bit more after his life, kind of what people in Binghamton have done to try and remember him. But yeah, kind of some other ways he worked Binghamton and upstate New York into the show. We've got an actual character from Binghamton. In one episode where, Jim, you might relate to this, a woman is stuck in a bus station in kind of a doppelganger purgatory. I don't know if you've had that specific experience.
This speaks to me.
Jim, what is Boscov's?
Oh, Boscov's. Boscov's is a landmark staple in Binghamton, New York. It is a department store located smack dab in the middle of downtown Binghamton and has been there, well, since the time of Rod Serling. So we're going on over 75 years, easily. Yeah,
it's a feature of downtown, I would say.
I would agree with you.
Boscov's was used as an inspiration for the department store in a really famous Twilight Zone episode called After Hours, which features mannequins that come to life.
Yes.
And I did a little more digging on Boscov's and mannequins that come to life, and it just so happens that the 1987 movie Mannequin, which is about a mannequin that comes to life, also featured a Boscov's. Like, it was actually filmed at a Boscov's in Pennsylvania. Not the one in Binghamton, though, but we can forgive him for that. But that's the premier mannequin coming to life department store destination.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's just a lot of upstate, specifically referenced in a bunch of different episodes. He'll, like, if they got to mention a town name, he just threw in like an upstate town.
That's right, baby.
All over the place. And it really kind of helped, create this specific universe and vibe for the show. I was actually reading the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation newsletter for spring 2023.
Love it.
And one article was about why successive Twilight Zone reboots haven't worked. And one of them was that, not having that specific vibe. Though they didn't specifically say upstate vibe, I'm going to say upstate vibe.
Love it.
And on the topic of the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation, I did a little diving into them, and they're based out of Binghamton. They throw Serling Fest every year. Jim, have you ever attended a Serling Fest?
I have never.
Well, let me tell you, the year 2024 may be the time to do it.
I would love to.
The last few years, they've been trying to raise enough money to make a statue of Rod Serling and put it in our favorite park, Recreation Park.
Holy shit, that would be incredible, man.
It's happening. They got the money, the statue's being made. It's like him in front of a door, kind of off-kilter door. Looks great.
So cool. That's really fucking cool.
If we had known about this when the Kickstarter was happening, you could have donated $200 to have your name on a brick in the park, and they send you a mini brick replica.
No shit.
They had things figured out.
Oh, that's so cool, man.
Yeah, they've been around since, I think it's 85. In 1981, I think that's 6 years after his death. Some friends and family of his in town were like, we should do something to make sure people know he was from here, and it was proud to be from here and to remember him. And one of the first things that happened was the Twilight Zone movie, which came out in 1983. Did you know they did the world premiere at a theater in Binghamton?
I did not know that. That's awesome.
The Crest Theater, and it was the town's mayor, Mayor Juanita Crabb.
Juanita Crabb, yeah.
And, are you familiar?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, she was mayor when I was a young Jim Jam.
I was going to say, what were you doing on June 11th, 1983?
I was 2. So probably crying or shitting, or maybe a combination of the two.
Just blocks away from Steven Spielberg. I tried really hard to find pictures of this premiere, and I don't think anyone brought a camera. There's no, it definitely happened.
Right.
And it had 4 different directors directed a segment in the movie. It was Spielberg, George Miller of Mad Max fame, Joe Dante of Gremlins fame, and John Landis of Trading Places.
Trading Places, yeah.
All directed segments. And interestingly, Steven Spielberg had his first directing job on a pilot that was Rod's show. His first job was working for Rod Serling on the show Night Gallery. And it's a bit of a cursed movie. John Landis had illegally hired 2 child actors and basically had them working late at night, which would have not been, up to code at that time, and also had them in an action sequence with explosions and a real helicopter, which also wouldn't have been up to code at that time. And the helicopter ended up crashing into the 2 child actors and an adult actor, and all 3 died on set, and really cast this kind of dark shadow over the movie itself. It led to Spielberg never talking to Landis again. George Miller, I think, walked off the movie. And yeah, a real tragedy that occurred while filming the movie. But bummer note. But it premiered in Binghamton, so there you go.
That's right, baby. That's right. Shout out to the Hamptons.
There you go. The theater that the movie premiered at, the Crest Theater, they demolished it to make room for a drugstore that never opened.
Awesome.
What are we doing downtown Binghamton? Can we get Juanita Crab on that?
If she's still alive, man,
I've got some questions.
we have some hard questions to ask about why on earth we would do such a thing, you know?
Indeed. But off of the momentum of that, the movie premiere happening, and again, kind of this work that group of people had started in 81, the Rod Serling Memorial Committee formed, and they've been like working to promote the work that he's done. And I'm going to read their mission statement, Jim, because they do some really cool work.
Yeah, do it. Let's go.
Let's see. Mission statement. Rod Serling's achievements in playwriting, speech-making, and broadcasting are considerable and important. As members of the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation, we dedicate ourselves to promote and preserve this great man's contributions to the arts and humanities. We pledge to educate the public about Rod Serling's genius and his passion, hoping that they will understand and appreciate his mastery of the creative arts, his unique understanding of human relationships, his esteem as a writer, his generosity as a speaker in and around Binghamton, and his uncompromising commitment to quality.
Love it. All those things ring true, for God's sakes. I mean,
yeah,
he is Binghamton's son. And I mean, with as I said earlier, man, like there's so many people he paved the way for, notably Spielberg.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's wild that I didn't know that personally.
The through line from Lucille Ball to Rod Serling to like Spielberg, like what, very, very cool connections, right? Everyone always says Hollywood's a small town, but
yeah,
maybe not as small a town as Binghamton.
That's right, baby. Binghamton, stand up.
There we go. I hinted at a local beef with the Bundy Museum.
Yeah.
And it is the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation that has beef.
All right, let's go.
I have a statement prepared. You will find this on their website. In response to many questions that we have received, please be aware that the Bundy Museum of Art and History and its Rod Serling Archive, that was air quotes for anyone listening, have no affiliation with the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation. In fact, the foundation and the Serling estate have long opposed the Bundy Museum's use of Rod Serling's name and likeness.
Whoa.
And I'll say the Rod Serling Archive, now I mixed them up. The Rod Serling Memorial Foundation has Serlings as members. So his nephew is on the board, and Carol, his wife, was an advisor to them when they first got started. So they seem legit.
God damn.
They also have pretty sweet t-shirts, so go throw them $22. Come to Serling Fest 2024. I think I'll be there. I don't know about you, Jim.
1000%. We're gonna gas up the car, man.
Guys, subscribe, share this so we can do a live record from Serling Fest 2024.
That would be incredible. Yeah, y'all gotta come up, man. Let's y'all gotta come up off these subscriptions so that we can get this popping, so that Serling Fest we can be out on the scene, man.
Yes, sir. It's gonna be the Twilight Zone.
Bang.
Hey.
BANG. Interesting knowledge of the Serling and Bundy beef, man. I had no idea that was simmering, if you will.
So, mail in your who you're going to back, the Bundy or the Rod Serling Memorial Committee. We'll keep tabs.
Yeah.
I think I'm team committee. Team committee, that makes sense, right? Almost as much as recreation park. I'm going to let it slide after this one.
Thank goodness. We were worried. Well, yeah, I think I feel like that. I think we covered it. I think we got we got everything. I think we got everything.
I think we did. I think that brings us to our closing segment here, where I need to clear up a big controversy. We're in our second episode, Jim, and already I've created a bit of a kerfuffle. Should we get into it?
I think so. I think now's a better time. Best time than any.
All right. It's something of a retraction I'm going to have to make. There's 2 issues. Well, 1 issue with 2 incidents, I should say. We can be candid about our record schedule. We put out our little trailer today. Our first episode, last week's episode, is coming out tomorrow. And within an hour of our logo being publicly released, it was brought to my attention that our logo may in fact include some downstate. Everyone pull out your phone, take a look at the logo, you'll see a little blip that looks like the end of a crunchy curly fry. And that's Westchester. And just not all of it. Yonkers is not on there. Jim, Yonkers is not on there. I can confidently say that. But it is a little bit of White Plains. There's a little bit of White Plains there for sure.
Right.
And I apologize. I will not be fixing it, but it's there. It's there. And then also last episode, I may or may not have included on a quiz something that was located also in Westchester. So I think for that, you were 0 for 3, but you know what? I don't think we can count it. So you still have a perfect streak.
Oh, sweet.
Your record is unblemished. It's we've stricken it from the record. The whole quiz doesn't count.
Love it.
We're
Throw it out.
Faulty information. So
throw that shit
I just
out.
wanted to clear the air, get ahead of the controversy. Make sure we're in the clear.
We don't want nasty emails. We don't want that.
Hey, where should they send those nasty emails, Jim?
They could send those incendiary remarks to understandingupstate@gmail.com.
If they have nice things to say, should they maybe rate and review our podcast?
Oh, 1000%. And they should give 5 stars easily.
And if they want to maybe drop their favorite upstate location or person or thing into that 5-star review, maybe we'll read about it on air. And maybe we'll even do an episode on it.
Oh, that'd be, I mean, what other reasons do you need to send that stuff in there? Personally makes total sense to me as to why one would want to do that.
Also, things people should want to do is share this episode. Guys, this is episode 2. One of the best things you can do for us if you like the show, share it with a friend. And on the topic of sharing things, Jim, do you have anything you want to plug? Anything you want to share with our listeners?
I do. First and foremost, you can find me at Jim Search on all social media. Go to jimsearchcomedy.com to look for comedy dates and things like that. But also, 2 things you should do. First is you should go to jimsearch.bandcamp.com. You should buy my comedy album, Upstate Understandings, produced by Rob Adler.
Whoa.
So that is one thing that you should do. And if you buy one, you can buy another one. Also, November 4th, you should go to Paz Joke Shed. That's right. That's a comedy show that's going to be happening at the Old Union Hall in Binghamton, New York. Get over there and pull up for that show. There's a 7 o'clock and a 9 o'clock show. It's going to be so much fun. Steven Brown is going to host it. My man Johnny McDonald is going to feature. I'm going to headline. If you want to buy tickets, go. You can pick those up at the Old Union Hotel, or you can go on Eventbrite and buy them there. But I'll see you for the 7 o'clock and I'll see you for the 9 o'clock. And that is what I got. Rob.
I'll just throw out, I also have an album out. You can find that at brooklynfrequency.bandcamp.com. It's called New York Sticky. It's a pretty okay album, I think. Go check it out. And like Jim said, buy a couple copies. Even though with my album, it's just digital, but like you probably have 2 computers. Put it on one, put it on the other. Hey, Jim, what are we up to next week?
So, folks, here is what we have in store for you next week. It's a little spooky as Halloween is going to be right around the corner. And we're going to talk about some haunted tales that have come from upstate New York. So get ready for that.
Sounds fun. Sounds good. Well, with that, Jim, did we figure out how to sign this thing off?
We still haven't yet. I feel like we were trying to say like, see you on the upside, or like.
How did Rod do it?
He said usually there was some traumatic experience at the end of the show, and he said, so
It turns out that Jeff never learned his lesson. He always wanted the worst from everyone, and he got that. And that is what happens in the Twilight Zone.
Hey, and that's what happens in Understanding Upstate, where we don't know how to wrap up the show, but we have to. So with that, Jim, I'll see you next week.
Yes, and I'll see you next week as well, sir. Peace.
Understanding Upstate is a podcast hosted by Jim Search and Rob Adler, edited by Rob Adler, and music from Regal Monk.